Hello, my name is Shane Brody. I've been mostly traveling around the U.S. talking to trans, gender non-conforming, non-binary, intersex people, plus allies and parents. I am now in Canada, which I'm very excited about. I'm actually on my way home to Alaska, and I'm driving. I've done this many times in my life. I've traveled up and down the Alcan and these highways since the 70s, actually. My parents did a lot of traveling here in Canada. My mom and I, of course, have Scottish relatives that live in the maritime provinces, kind of distant relatives, and she visited them, and Nova Scotia and that sort of thing. And then I just remember there's all these pictures of us in Canada with a lot of bagpipes, yeah. Sorry, I have a lot of sinus issues just from traveling around a lot, and I encountered quite a bit of fires and smoke down in Oregon, in eastern Oregon. But the air is nice and clear up here. I'm very excited about that. And today I am talking with somebody from our community, and they're going to introduce themselves in the way that they want to.
Hi, my name is Skylar. I am transgender woman, and I'm here with Shane today to share as much as I possibly can.
Yeah, I met you online because you are a kind of a leader of a group. There was a little contention about that.
Yes.
You were actually kicked out of an online group, but then you were so popular, you started another one, and immediately a whole bunch of people joined that group.
Yes.
And I thought that was great. I'd seen some of your activity online, and you seem very much somebody who likes to, I don't know how you'd put this, but kind of cheerlead for the community. Like, you keep people's spirits up, and you post a lot of events and that sort of thing. I was wondering what you do kind of in the community, kind of in real life, because it seems like you're connected to a lot of events and communities.
In real life, we try to do about one event a week. Okay. Sometimes it's bi-weekly, depending on our schedules. Mm-hmm. But we'll get together, play board games, or just meet in a park and play Jenga. And it's just really providing a safe space for people to just be themselves and be confident to leave their homes. There's a lot of people that are really introverted.
Okay, yeah.
So I feel it's really important to get them out and about.
Yeah, it seems like board games in particular are really popular. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
I think that's something we can all kind of relate to, and it's never really in a negative sense. It kind of keeps things positive and a little competitive, and it kind of generates that spirit and connection with people. And you can remember last time that this person won, and it just creates a lot of memories for everybody.
I noticed on this trip that a lot of people played Dungeons and Dragons too. Do you ever do that?
I loved Dungeons and Dragons as a child. Unfortunately, I stopped playing around 2nd edition. Okay. I wasn't a fan of 3rd edition, and I just kind of gave up after that. So.
Okay. I don't even know what that means. But I actually skipped over Dungeons and Dragons. I was living overseas in Africa at the time, so I didn't get a lot of, Americana, or I guess Canadian. I don't know how to say that. I guess I listen to CBC radio sometimes, and they talk about North America a lot. So Canada often includes, Mexico and the U.S. in their discussions, whereas America, of course, is only focused on America usually.
Usually, yes.
So they never say North America; they just say the U.S. or whatever. So speaking of that. I've been traveling around the U.S. and talking to trans people, and there's a lot of people worried there, right? Mm-hmm. We have kind of this checkerboard of states that have different laws that are being passed, bills being proposed and sometimes passed, and then they become law, restricting or rescinding rights for trans people. And I was wondering what's happening here. We're in Calgary. Mm-hmm. Big city. Actually, I didn't even realize this was such a big city. It's immense. A lot of activity, a lot of industry here. So I was wondering what is happening in Canada, but then also in Alberta and maybe even in Calgary.
Well, to be honest, we've had a pretty good go in the last 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I first transitioned, like they still had that real life experience rule where you had to talk to a psychiatrist or a psychologist.
Oh, really? Up until recently, that was still the case?
Yeah, that was about 6 or 7 years ago, I believe. Or sorry, it might have been slightly longer, 7 or 8 years ago.
That's interesting. Because that was the case like 20 plus years ago when I first transitioned. They still had the real life test or whatever.
Yeah.
Now they don't really do that.
No. Now there's informed consent, and it's entirely possible that there was informed consent before, but there wasn't very many doctors that would allow it.
Okay. And here the medical system is very different than in the U.S.
Yeah.
In the U.S., pretty much you have to have cash or pretty much private insurance, unless you're covered by Medicaid, but you have to be pretty much completely disabled or very poor or elderly to access that. But here in Canada, you have more of a public medical system that's accessible.
Yeah. And it was actually not super difficult. I think it was more me building up barriers for myself towards getting care.
Did it take you a while to access that? Some people in the U.S. complain about that. I'm not even sure if they know about the Canadian system all that much. But what we hear down in the U.S. is that there's long waiting lists or something to get care up here.
Typically, like to start hormone therapy, once you get a referral we have a local organization here called Skipping Stone.
Okay. Is that a clinic?
It's actually like a non-for-profit,
Okay.
kind of just like a community-run organization.
Sure.
I don't know a whole lot of details about how they run their operation.
I can put a link to them.
Yeah, absolutely. They're extremely helpful. We refer everybody there all the time. They have a list of doctors that are accepting new patients.
Yeah. So instead of just word of mouth, so what I'm used to is people just asking around to see who the cool doctor is down in the U.S. And usually it's just one. And sometimes you have to go far afield to like a big city. So here you actually have an organization that will help you with that. That's great.
Yeah. So they'll even lead you in the right direction for obviously your doctor, but they also have like a lot of gender affirming programs that are local.
Okay. And what does that mean, gender affirming programs? Like what's
for like
the variety?
trans, say for example, trans women learning how to do your makeup.
Okay.
Or hairstyles.
Okay.
You go
Would
in.
these be private businesses or? What are they?
No, it's actually all run by the organization. So what they do is they'll get.
So you don't have to have a lot of money. It sounds like. Okay.
No, and it runs on donation.
Okay.
So
So once again,
it's accessible.
in the U.S., all we have are these options where we pay a lot of money. There are people who are kind of like experts who set up shop, and then you travel to them, and then they kind of do a makeover of you.
Yeah.
But it's very secretive, and it's very pricey. So,
Extremely.
Yeah. So that's wonderful that here you have just an organization that takes that on. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's run on donation. So like if you can afford this stuff, you put the money in. If you can't, it's okay. It's still accessible.
Yeah, right. And oftentimes, I don't know what it's like here, at least in the U.S., trans people are very poor usually. Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed there's definitely a wage gap. I think that's more between like the younger generation and the older generation because, like, unfortunately, like I transitioned later in life, so I've already established a career.
Sure.
Whereas a younger person may not have established a career, and it's harder for them to get into like a professional career,
Right.
And harder to find like a firm that would take them on and things like that. Whereas
Because a lot of things are going on. They're transitioning and moving into the workplace
Exactly.
at the same time.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Whereas, like I was older and I was working for my employer for about a year, before I started my transition.
And you work in like manufacturing and heavy industry, something like that?
It's mainly heavy equipment, but
Okay.
we specialize in rebuilding hydraulic pumps and motors.
Okay.
And that's kind of our claim to fame. We're
Yeah.
very good at it.
Yeah.
And so I deal with everything from combines to hydrovac trucks.
Okay, great. Yeah.
You name it, anything that runs on
There you go.
hydraulic oil. We're working on a dry ice machine
There you go.
today. So,
Yeah.
Anything that runs on fluid power. Basically.
Yeah, I noticed that this was kind of an industrial area, like a lot of shops down here. And I got to say, it's the cleanest industrial area I think I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, we really lucked out. This is an amazing facility. We got it for
Yeah.
a great price. Our company bought it. It's a privately owned company.
Great.
Which is great. We have all sorts of support within our company. Not on like the level that some companies might have, where they have programs for LGBTQ plus people.
So like very welcoming, very affirming, even celebratory. Sometimes some companies will have groups within the company where they focus on LGBT people just to celebrate their own employees. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of companies that do that. Mine is not one of them.
Okay.
We kind of just generally view everybody as humans.
Yeah, yeah.
We have
Well, as
probably...
long as you're not harassed and you're getting a good paycheck, there you go.
Exactly, right?
I mean, that's all people really want when they go to work, right?
Yeah, and we have people from every nationality here.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. I think in the U.S. we have to focus more on really supporting people within the workplace. I think that has to do with some activism on the part of LGBT people, just because it's so hostile sometimes.
It can be, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Up here in Canada, you guys seem like you're nicer to each other or something.
Generally, it depends on the neighborhood you're in.
I think so in general. There's something so crass about the U.S. I mean, I'm American and I have a love-hate relationship with my country, but there's something so crass about America. And I come up here and I'm like, oh, Canada. Yay.
It is a nice place to live. We were very blessed,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I know I look at some of the stuff going on in the States and
Yeah.
it makes me very sad.
I know, it's wild.
And a lot of people here are scared too. They're looking at that, and then
Yeah.
when we
I
get a
do
change
know-
of government up here,
I've heard that there was a kind of more of a conservative streak here in Alberta in particular. Yeah.
for like the last 50 years.
Okay.
But we've also had progress while they were in power. So I don't think it's okay to be afraid. Everybody has their fears. But I don't think they're going to be taking away anything from us.
Okay.
We got a lot of things in while they were in power. They're not going to strip human rights, as far as I know, and I'm, knock on wood.
Are they called the Conservatives here, or do you have different names for them? I don't know.
In our province, the reigning power is the UCP. It's a United Conservative Party.
Okay.
And it was a bunch of different conservative parties, and they just kind of grouped together to win.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes I notice that more right-wing groups are sometimes more motivated to actually work together than the left is, at least in the U.S. And sometimes that has to do with, because they are coming from more of a traditional kind of background, they're not actually making progress. Progress is hard, right? It requires a lot of conversations and a lot of change. Whereas if you're kind of regressing, it's kind of easier to get together because you're not changing all that much.
Yeah. And like our population here is extremely afraid of change.
Yeah. Okay.
We did have.
Why is that?
I think that's just the rural mentality.
Okay.
It's always worked that way.
I don't believe that though.
It's if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of attitude.
Okay. But
there was a lot that was broken.
That doesn't mean you have to be a bigot though. Just
No,
because you live in
definitely
a rural
not.
area.
No, I live in a small town of 1,200 people.
Yeah.
And generally, I've literally never had an issue with anybody. Not directly. I'm sure there's sideways glares and whatnot. But
You seem very out.
I just live my life authentically as much as I can. Because I didn't really see that when I was a kid. If I would have seen somebody like me walking down the street when I was a kid, it would have changed my entire life.
So is the place that you're from, is it kind of an isolated community, or do you have a lot of contact with bigger cities or more urban people?
Well, we're
cosmopolitan ideas.
We're what we would call like a bedroom community.
Okay.
So there's really not much industry.
So suburban. Okay.
Yeah. And it's about 20 minutes away from the biggest city is Airdrie.
Okay.
So you do all your shopping on the way home. You really don't generally shop much in town. There is services, but
do you know your neighbors?
Absolutely.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
In some suburban places in the U.S., people don't really associate with their neighbors so much. They just kind of go home and then next morning go to work and,
No, my my neighbor, if I need to let her dog out while she's out of town or she's on a date or something like that,
Great.
and she'll log in remotely on her phone and unlock the door and I'll let her dogs out. And,
Great. Wow.
Or like you leave your garage door open in the winter. You shoot them a text and,
Sure.
just so you know, I went into your house to close your garage door, right? Didn't want your heating bill going through the roof.
Otherwise, you'll just get a pile of snow in there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the kind of neighborhood that we live in.
Okay, good.
Some people are more accepting than others. I think there's definitely been a lot of hot seat stuff right now, especially with the drag readings and stuff like that. We're not immune to it. We have a library in town, and recently they were
up in Airdrie.
In Irricana,
Okay.
Our little town is 1,200.
Okay.
We actually have a library.
Okay.
And they were going to do a reading, and unfortunately, they received threats.
Who would be threatening you?
I'm not sure.
Do you have organized groups here? Because in the U.S., we seem to have organized groups that are doing
There
this.
is. I'm not really familiar with the names. I don't really partake in protests.
Yeah. Okay.
Or counter protests.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I should or not, but
I don't believe in that word should.
Yeah.
You do what you can.
Exactly. I help in my own way.
Yeah, you're really good at, it seems like, I mean, I haven't hardly had any contact with you, but just from what I've seen of you online, you seem to be somebody who likes to bring together community and create fun spaces for people.
Yeah.
And so that's really needed. So never think that you're not doing enough, because that's a lot.
I think it is, and I think it's focusing on bringing people together instead of dividing them. And I don't mind division though. I mean, if the other people have really bad ideas and they want to take away our rights, I don't mind division at all. But absolutely, but I've also had experiences where I'm not afraid to go to an anti-trans post and say Happy Pride. You know what I mean? And I know I'm gonna get 1,000 messages saying that disrespectful things. But I have also had instances where people did respond negatively, and I changed their mind. Yeah, and it was one or two people. Sure, but that's one or two people that maybe they'll change their spouse's mind or their children.
You know what I tend to do with those is I will say something and then I just will not check online for a really long time. So they can respond however they want, but I just had my say. Yeah,
and I just try to kill them with kindness and just make them realize that we're just normal people. Yeah, I have a career, I have a family, I've got 4 kids. Yeah, you're a member of the community. I grocery shop just like everybody else. Yeah, I want to go shopping for clothes, and that's okay. You're part of many communities. Yes. Yeah. Not just the trans community, not just the LGBT community, but you're part of the town that you've lived in. Are you from there, by the way? No, I grew up in Calgary for the most part. Yeah. Okay. So you moved out to the burbs at some point. Yes. Kind of classic. Yeah. Absolutely. I was actually working in Saskatchewan for quite some time in a small town, and I got the small town feel, and I just decided that was what I wanted. I wanted to go to the grocery store and they'll walk in the door and they say, "Hi, Josh, how are you?" Everybody knows your name, and that's the kind of community that I enjoy. Well, I noticed that you just used, kind of a male name. Do you still go by that, or? Well, actually, I really like my name, which is different than a lot of people. I know that sometimes it's associated with trauma and stuff like that. In the U.S., some people call it their dead name. I don't use that term. I don't like that term. I don't either. Yeah, but I think it's kind of dark, but that's just my opinion. I also agree, but some people do use it, and they have their reasons for using it. Absolutely, and that's entirely valid. Yeah. But yes, so I was named Josh when I was a kid. I did a lot of great things as Josh. And I've created connections with people as Josh. But I have recently decided to legally change my name to Skylar. And it was kind of apprehensive towards it because I like my name. And somebody suggested, well, why don't you keep your name as your middle name?
Okay, yeah.
And so I'm going to be Skylar Joshua Buzzle.
Great.
And
then Skylar, it's kind of some women use it, some men use it.
Yeah.
It's kind of nondescript in a way.
Yeah, and it depends on how you spell it as well. Like with an E, it's generally more male.
Okay.
And then with an A, it's generally more female.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually met a trans man in Florida who still has his female name that his mother gave him. And it's because his mother gave him that name, and he's so close to his mother that he actually doesn't want to change it. So there's a variety of reasons why people don't want to change their name, or they want to keep aspects of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just kind of figured that Skylar, and kind of moving forward in my transition a little bit, and because I've only been transitioning for about a year and a half.
Yeah, okay.
So things are changing.
Well, you seem really comfortable.
I try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you're a little bit nervous. We had a little talk about that.
Yes.
But I don't mind that at all. In fact, I find that really refreshing, because sometimes people who are activists, sometimes they can be a little glib. So you're definitely not glib, and I love that. So
Yeah,
that's great.
I'm definitely humble.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What keeps you humble like that?
I've hit rock bottom a few times in my life, and I know what it's like to live on the street, and I know what it's like to starve and not have food.
Yes.
And so I'm thankful for everything.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad, it's either a lesson or a blessing. Like, it's just.
Do you want to talk at all about what got you there, or what brought you out of that?
Well, generally it was addiction. When I was a kid, I was about 15, 16 years old. And I was addicted to methamphetamines.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't take
serious
long.
Stuff.
Yeah, it didn't take very long. I pretty much destroyed my life in about 6 months. And then I ended up living on the streets in Ontario for about a year, where I didn't know anybody at all.
And Ontario is the really big city.
Well, no, it was actually a smaller city. I was living in Sarnia at the time. And so I experienced a lot of really negative situations there. But I ended up, because I was a minor, after about a year, I turned myself into the police, and they flew me back to Alberta in Calgary here to live with my mom.
Great.
And so that's when I kind of picked things back up. And
so you weren't criminalized, basically, for these problems that you were having.
No.
They actually helped you and brought you back home.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Like, I definitely wasn't always on the straight and narrow. Living on the street, you have to do what you do.
That's right.
To survive.
Yeah.
And I would never judge anybody, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely humbling. And
did any of this have to do with like gender identity or dealing with that sort of thing, or?
No, at that point in my life, I really kind of just dismissed the whole possibility of it.
Okay.
It was just kind of the views that I had as a child, that it wasn't really possible.
Okay.
There was information. I'm not going to say there wasn't information. It just generally wasn't available. Public knowledge.
Yeah.
About like hormone therapy,
Sure.
which did exist, obviously, when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But in my eyes, I'd only ever seen it as like a sexualized thing, or
Right.
a fetish.
Right.
Or plastic surgery.
It was heavily pathologized. Like, it was part of like abnormal psychology books and that sort of thing. In the U.S., it was listed as its own diagnosis, like an illness. Yeah.
Oh, I could imagine. Yeah. I remember when I was a child, I was watching a documentary in a hotel room with my dad, and it was actually about transgender people and intersex people. And intersex just blew my mind, and I was like, I wish I was like that. Like, what is going on here? But unfortunately, the documentary was more geared towards like sex work.
Okay.
And so in my mind, as growing up, it was a very sexualized thing, and that just wasn't. I couldn't relate to it.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't see any
positive
role models.
Here you are working in heavy manufacturing, and
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, and I think it's really important to show that we can do everything. There's nothing that we can't do.
And there's nothing wrong with people who choose that as well. Like we were saying, some people, like you were on the streets and you were doing some things that were helping with your survival.
Yeah.
Also, sex work can be about survival.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
And some people actually, it's less about survival, it's actually empowerment for them. Like I know a lot of older lesbians, for instance, who were very empowered sex workers, and they made a lot of money actually in a very short time, which was great. Much better than like being a secretary or something, administrative assistant or something like that.
And you follow your passion, and that's what's important.
Yeah, and if you're good at it, great.
Yeah, right? Me, not so much.
Exactly. I'm more in like the nervous person.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned your family. What is your relationship with your family in terms of being a trans person? Because sometimes that can be an issue, especially since you're like late in life, transitioning, that sort of thing.
My relationship with my mother is actually really good. At first, she was absolutely confused.
Confused,
there has been,
or was it more negative than that?
there was negative moments. Obviously, I was married prior to the relationship that I was in, and of course things get thrown around that like you destroyed your family, and you kind of get those negative shock value comments, and it hurts. It definitely does.
Yeah. Did that still go? Do you feel some of that still, or did that go away?
I definitely feel that.
Okay.
I should have been more honest with myself earlier. And there was always writing on the wall. Like it was always there. Even my ex knew.
Oh, really?
Within, a couple of years of us being together, that I was a lot more feminine than I displayed publicly. And like there was things that I would do in the house, but not outside the house. And but obviously not to the extent that I was transgender.
Sure.
I didn't come out and say that to
Sure.
them. So I do feel I deceived.
Well, it's a big leap, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and at first, like I kind of thought I was like non-binary, and I'm like maybe people would be more accepting towards, somebody that was non-binary or like a femme presenting male. Turned out that was actually a lot harder to explain to people. The whole non-binary thing than just to own it and say that I was transgender.
And those identities are their own identities. And if that's not you, then, that doesn't quite work either.
Exactly, right? And then I found myself trying to explain something that I really wasn't and I couldn't really connect to. But I was also confused at the time, and I just didn't know where I belonged. I just knew I wasn't in the male spectrum.
Yeah, it's a process, too. Like, it's a process of discovery, because we don't have societies that are very welcoming of this sort of change, or welcoming of people who are kind of in between or changing, or that sort of thing, or need medical care around this even. So you brought up a word which I'm very tempted to edit out, but I don't think I will. You mentioned deceived. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because that's a really negative word.
Well, I use it because I hid things from my partner. Sure. And that's in my mind like a deception.
Okay.
And it's not meant that in a malicious way.
Sure. Yeah.
But there was definitely aspects of my life that I wasn't really ready to share with my partners.
You just weren't comfortable, right?
Yeah.
And then also it sounds like you were discovering who you were as well. So how can you even sometimes explain that if it's amorphous within yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there was definitely things that I hid that I shouldn't have. I should have been more honest, especially with my current partner now, which she actually knew me as being transgender before we got together.
Okay, great.
And I detransitioned so that we could be together. So that was an interesting.
No.
There's an interesting story there as well.
Yeah, tell me about that. I've heard of people stopping hormones or stopping the process because of family in various ways. So it's always a little bit sad when I hear that, though, because it's like societal pressure, on yourself.
Yeah, and I think she felt a lot of pressure as well. Like she wasn't attracted to women. And so when we were talking about it, she's like, well, what if you meet a woman that, before we got together, what if you meet a woman that you want to have kids with and you want to do this and that? And I'm like, well, it's still possible, right?
Yeah.
100% still possible.
Right.
And
that's another issue we should talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. But I detransitioned and lived for about 6 years as a male again. And then I just kind of
Is that
had a
the
wake-up
period
moment.
where you got married again?
No, we're actually just engaged.
Okay.
So it was really cute because like I proposed to her, and then like a week later she got on her knees and she proposed back to me. So we
Okay.
both have engagement rings, right?
Okay, there you
And
go.
this is while I was like male presenting, right?
Okay.
So I'm like, this is amazing. Like I never thought somebody would propose to me.
That's great.
It was a really good feeling. So yeah, we got that taken care of, but. It was about 1.5 years ago that I kind of just had a moment, and I really had to make sure that I started living my life for myself as well, because I realized that everything that I was portraying and believed in and trying to be for my family, it can all be taken away from you. And then when you're left there by yourself, all you have is yourself.
Right.
And if you're not happy with yourself,
Right.
then you have nothing, and that's kind of the spot where I was at.
Yeah, and if you're not happy, then what are you radiating out to other people? If you're hiding parts of yourself, it's like you're living a double life or something. That can that's a lot of work for one thing.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd love to speak about that because like the headspace that's relieved when you transition and you openly live your life.
Well, as you say
so
that,
much more.
I can tell you're quite happy about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Just to not have to filter everything, the way that you present yourself or the way that you talk to people, or your opinions, because obviously I work in a heavy industry. So there's a lot of conservative ideology. I work with people that are, against this or that or whatever, but we have pretty much no political conversations.
Okay.
We understand and respect each other's views, and
that's kind of the work culture, is that you don't bring that sort of thing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Like we jokingly talk about my situation all the time. It's actually really friendly. It is kind of funny. My boss said to me, he's like, it's kind of hard to, it's harder for me to say, let me transfer you to Josh and she'll take care of, and she'll take care of your needs or whatever. And he's like, it's so hard to put Josh and she together. And I'm like, I understand that. I completely acknowledge that. And and it's not just me that's transitioning. It's the people that are around me as well.
Yes, that's
and
right.
You have to,
and your partner as well.
100%. Yeah. Because then their sexuality gets called into question. And a lot of people don't like labels.
Right.
Like,
how did she deal with that? I mean, it can be tricky to talk about somebody who's not part of the interview, but how because you did sort of detransition in the relationship, and then you're transitioning again. That's kind of interesting.
It definitely created a little bit of animosity, especially because of the way that she discovered that I was transitioning again. I didn't have the courage to tell her. I had started hormone therapy, and I was into it for about 2 or 3 months, and she wanted to join my support group. She was well aware that I was in a support group, but I kind of kept it to myself because that's kind of what support is for, right?
So you weren't really letting her in.
Yes, I was kind of locking her out of that, and I know that as soon as she joined, she would see that I had started hormone therapy. So I kind of was left with a choice. I made the wrong one. I let her join. I didn't tell her. I had the chance. I could have came out and told her right then and there that I have started hormone therapy. I didn't have the courage to do it, so I let her join the group, and she found it on her own. I wasn't there. I was at work. So
you couldn't really support her or talk about it. Yeah.
So she was left there to her own devices, and it was a very poor choice on my behalf.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of feel that I was a little deceptive and
Now's your chance to make up for that, though.
Exactly.
In various ways.
100% transparency with everything. Honesty is very important.
Yeah.
We don't keep anything from each other anymore.
Does she understand now why you were more secretive, or?
I don't think she ever will.
Okay.
I think that's permanent scar.
sorry.
100%. I've tried to explain it, but in my own mind, I can't really justify it either.
Sure.
Like I should have just owned it.
Sure.
And told her about it before
Sure.
I started, or at least talked to her about it.
And do you have kids?
Yeah, we have one child together. He's 4. Then we also she has a son from a prior relationship. He's 17.
Oh, wow.
And then
that's quite a gap.
Yeah. So we've got one graduating high school literally yesterday, and one in play school. So there's a bit of a spectrum there.
Yeah.
And I also have an 11 and 12-year-old with my ex-wife as well.
Oh, wow. Lots of kids.
So we have 4 boys. There's definitely enough testosterone in the house.
Okay.
So that's why switching teams.
Do you kind of have blended families, or, some people who have children from different marriages kind of it's kind of becomes one big family because of custody issues and who's going to take care of the kids, and so you actually become very close.
Yep, absolutely. We try to stay as close as we can. It's a little bit harder. My 2 sons with my ex-wife live about an hour and a half away.
Okay.
So we only see them typically sometimes once a month, once every 2 months. Especially nowadays due to like sicknesses and stuff. Like somebody's got a runny nose, and you don't want to spread that from household to household. And not that we're germaphobes, but we don't want anybody getting sick.
Right.
My partner works in childcare or a play school as well.
Oh, yes.
So
you're very aware of that.
Yeah. The little petri dish children.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
All right. So how are the kids dealing with this?
Darian, our oldest son, he's totally okay. He's 17 years old, so he knows people online in real life that are also transitioning. Yeah. Or questioning, or
so he has peers.
Exactly. So he's not. He's still very accepting of everything.
Yeah. I've heard that the younger people, like they've done some research in the U.S. about younger people, and they're very accepting. Like it's something like 80% or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. My 2 sons with my ex-wife, they are not as versed because they don't see me as often.
Okay.
So there's always like the he and the whatever, and that I try not to let it bother me, and I say that it doesn't bother me, but of course just it does kind of chip away at you a little bit.
Well, it sounds like you've had to sort of cultivate some patience around that, right? Because they're your kids.
Yeah, and they were around for 10 years before I transitioned.
Right.
So there's, like I said, everybody's transitioning, right?
Yeah.
One thing I'm very lucky, my youngest son, Kelly, he's 4. So he hasn't really known me any other way.
Oh, great.
So, and it was funny because yesterday he was questioning whether his big brother is a boy or a girl.
Oh, okay.
And he says, well, daddy's a girl and mommy's a girl. And what's Darian? Is he a boy or a girl? And I'm like, he actually like called me a she or a girl, right?
Great,
and like that was really cool. And I definitely take like the organic approach. I don't like if he calls me a he or whatever, I'm not like no, I don't correct him.
Sure.
I just kind of I throw hints out here and there, but I definitely try not to correct him too much and force it on him.
Yeah. So you're kind of going at their pace.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same way you teach a child anything, really. Like you're not going to force a 4-year-old to learn math. Like it's something you got to play with. Like grab some beans and start counting them, kind of deal, right? Instead of just a pencil and paper. Yeah, so that's really cool.
Are you both mom? Are you both called mom?
No, I'm dad. I've always been a dad.
Okay.
I know
Do you
everybody
think
has.
You'll keep that role?
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people have their own views, and they're all valid.
I think there's a lot of variation that people deal with.
Yeah. It is hard. I know a lot of people, like recently with Father's Day last weekend.
Oh, I hate those Hallmark card holidays.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I hate them.
Yeah. And it was really sweet. Because obviously I did my, Happy Father's Day post on Facebook and whatnot. And my mom actually commented on it saying, like, Happy Parents' Day.
Oh, wonderful.
And I'm like, oh, that's
Thank
sweet.
you, Mom.
Yeah. Like, she really does, like, those little things that really make the difference, right?
That's
like,
great.
that really brought up a big smile because I know a lot of people struggle with that day.
Yeah. I don't have any family, and I had bad relationship with my father, definitely. So I'm like, oh.
Yes.
I hate these phony holidays.
Oh, I know. Right?
I wish all our holidays could be Halloween, actually.
That would be cool.
That's my favorite one.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I still appreciate like Father's Day for myself.
Great.
And yeah, I know some people don't, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Everybody can have their own thing.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of wish, there's also Mother's Day. In Russian culture, they actually have kind of like this International Women's Day, and every Russian man will give flowers to every woman that they know, not just if they have a relationship with them in some way, whether that's familial or romantic, just whatever women are in their lives, they show appreciation to them by giving them flowers. And I think that's really lovely, actually. I wish we would do more of that, where it's less about, this specific kind of relationship that I have.
Yeah.
Just appreciating everybody, I think, is much better.
Absolutely.
But that's just my bias. Anyway, so earlier I mentioned that I wanted to point out that you had talked about reproduction. So I was wondering if we could talk about that a little bit, because that's a little bit of a hot topic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So please go ahead.
Okay.
I'm not sure what to ask you, actually.
Yeah,
I'm at a
I was
little bit
waiting
of
for
a
the
loss.
question.
Yeah.
As far as reproduction, it's totally possible to obviously conserve your sperm.
Yes. So you're talking about a bank.
Yeah. You can totally bank it if you catch it pre-transition, obviously. And I have heard stories of people stopping hormone therapy and being able to produce again. And
that's right.
Obviously, like it's not something that's they can't say whether it's permanent or not. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
They obviously say that it's not a form of birth control for a reason, so it's not always going to kill your sperm.
That's right. That's right.
There is exceptions to the rule.
And then people on my side, they will sometimes stop hormone therapy as well
during pregnancy.
And if they still have their uterus and whatnot, they can sometimes carry and give birth. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and that's absolutely beautiful. I love when I see like a trans male and trans female together.
Oh,
and
yes.
I've seen so many beautiful stories of them having children, and I'm just like, oh, this is amazing.
I've seen some really cute couples that are trans women and trans men. Like, they're just so cute.
Oh,
totally.
It is adorable.
Totally.
I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And it was funny because we've had like a couple of incidences where we were like, late on the period or whatever. And,
okay.
And I remember one day Danielle looked at me. She's like, "Does that mean we're gonna have a transgender baby?"
Oh no!
And I'm like, I don't think it works like that.
No. Every most all trans people come from cis heterosexual people.
Yeah.
Just like gay people as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's not what turns us.
Like genetically modified baby.
No, that's not what we are. That is not what we are.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, we're just we've been around forever. I mean, gay people and trans people literally have been around forever. It's actually some of my guests have pointed out that it's part of sort of this domineering white supremacist culture that has narrowed what we think about like gender and that sort of thing into like this really strict binary.
Yeah, like a social construct, really.
Yeah, it's totally
it's
that
just
way.
Opinions.
It's totally that way. And we all know people who are not part of that. Even if you don't know trans people, you know women who are more butch, you know men, cisgender men who are more feminine, I mean, it's totally a construct when we're like, men are this way and women are this way and nothing in between.
Yeah.
You know, it's ridiculous.
Absolutely, yeah. And I see it more and more where kids are, like little boys in schools are painting their fingernails.
Yeah, sure.
And
why not?
Why not, right?
Why not?
And like I remember one of my
Be
sons,
artists too. Paint everything.
yeah, and like I volunteer at play school and stuff. And the one day that one of my sons, they were playing dress up,
Okay.
and he wanted
sure.
to be a princess. It was right around when Frozen was out.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
All
and
the kids love that.
Yeah, and he wanted to dress up as a princess, and I'm like, I'm 100% behind it. If you want to
Why
do
not?
that, absolutely.
Why not?
And the little
It's
girls
all
in there were
drag-
like, you can't be a princess, and I'm like, sure you can. Why not?
It's all drag anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
What is women's clothing?
Yeah.
What is men's clothing? I
Yeah,
don't know.
and like, is a girl not allowed to be a pirate? Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I want to see some women pirates.
Yeah.
I remember there was a movie, I forget what it was called. It might have been called Pirates or something. I think Gina Davis was in it. Remember Gina Davis? She was an American actress, kind of tall.
I'm really bad with names
Okay.
of
Well,
celebrities.
anyway, she has brown hair. She's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. She was in some pirate movie anyway. That just reminded me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I believe you could be anything you want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I think there were some women pirates in the Caribbean, actually. Yeah, I think
I would be afraid.
famously, actually.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes the women warriors are stronger than the men.
Oh gosh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's take a break.
Okay.